My name is Art Markart. My hometown is Lindenhurst, New York.
In this dirty old part of the city where the sun refused to shine.
First off, before I go any further, I'd like to tell Tim and Maureen that I'm sorry it took so long for me to do this, but it's been a difficult process that I've gone through. I'm very helpful on it. And, Tom and I did discuss this years ago when he was in school, but I just had a long, long time before I had made peace with myself to go forward. So, I'm there.
People tell me there ain't no use in trying. Oh my girl, you're so young and pretty. There's one thing I know is true.
The United States, as the world knows, will never start a war. We do not want a war. We do not now expect a war. This generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression.
I was in the Army. I was an E5 enlisted sergeant, what they called a shake and bake sergeant. I basically was a sergeant in 11 months in the Army, which created some problems for the lifers. The reason being the Army did that is NCOs were kind of being used up quickly. An example, in 1968, there were 5,640 graduates of NCO school. 483 of them were killed, 8.5%. 1969, 6,572 graduates, 643 were killed in action, or 9.8%. And in my graduating year, 4,150 sergeants came out, 292 of them were killed. So 7.1%. So as you can see, infantry sergeants were used up quickly. Before draft, mostly anti-war. I was in college. I went to lots of, several anti-war protests. It was all over the campuses at that time. Returning veterans would talk about what it was like, and numerous times they would say it was such a waste of time and energy in American lives. I talked to a bunch of the guys because, they were just kind of open and stuff. I really didn't want to go. I just kind of did what you had to do. I was really into folk music at the time, and I still am. And folk music was like the anti-war message at the time. Where All the Flowers Gone was real popular, the Draft Dodger rang and songs like that. But it's nothing I really could have done about it, so my view of the draft was, I kind of expected it.
Sarge, I'm only 18, I got a ruptured spleen, and I always carry a purse. I've got eyes like a bat and my feet are flat and my asthma's getting worse.
I'd been drafted 7 times. Because in college they would call you every couple months, for physical and testing, stuff, which I did. Pretty much everybody my age was either drafted, enlisted, or failed their physical. I had a good friend of mine I went to high school and college with. He was a real hippie at the time, and we saw him probably 30 plus years ago in Ocala, Florida. He was a school teacher, still had his big ponytail and kind of stuff like that. We spent an afternoon together. It was awkward, and we haven't spoke since, and I probably will never talk to him again.
But he dodged the draft.
He dodged the draft. The draft process probably goes back to the Civil War, but it was restarted back for World War II when they needed everybody. Every male needed to register with the Selective Service when they turned 18 years old. In the summer of 1965, when I graduated high school, President Johnson increased the monthly draft notices from 15,000 to 40,000, which meant from 180,000 draftees a year to 480,000 draftees a year, so it was difficult.
I have asked the commanding general, General Westmoreland, what more he needs to mounting aggression. He has told me, and we will meet his needs. I have today ordered to Vietnam the Airmobile Division and certain other forces which will raise our fighting strength from 75,000 to 125,000 men almost immediately.
Draft was done by a lottery system. basically taking 21, 20, 21, 22, up to 26. But if you had the deferment, you kind of get bumped to the front. So I had my deferments, even though I was older, I kind of got bumped forward. And technically, a draftee, if he was drafted, could technically be in ground combat 5 months after he was drafted. I tried to fill every way I could. Again, being drafted 7 times, I kind of knew the routine. I knew they couldn't touch me in a lot of cases because I had the deferment. So I tried several ways to do it. I tried to fail the hearing test. It's funny now I get the hearing aids. But I tried to fail the hearing test, and the sergeant said to me, you're going to be here, 7 years, 8 months, and 16 days, whatever it was, that I'm left in service because you're going to pass this test. So, that was one. Another time after doing the test, I put a straight pin in my underwear. You had to pee in a little jar, so I pricked my finger, I squeezed the blood in the urine, turned it in. And I probably got 5 or 6 guys down, and the guy who took the test yells out loud, "It's a miracle! Oh my God, it's a miracle!" And everybody stops and looks, and calls over the lieutenant and stuff. This man's alive, it's amazing. Obviously, I put too much blood in my urine, so I should have been dead. So, it was a cute idea, but I'm sure they've seen it, hundreds of times before, and I thought it was being kind of unique. Another thing I tried to do, I kept whacking myself on the knees with a hammer to get surfer knees, which was a way to get out. None of it worked. I did think about going to Canada. I did think about dodging the draft, but we were just getting married at the time. And
The draft notice came about a month or so before our actual wedding date. So we had been planning it for a year, and then he got the notice. And at that point, we were looking forward, which was our marriage and our family and children, and didn't want to force them to live in Canada when we enjoyed.
We didn't think we'd ever be able to come back, which we didn't know. Plus, my father, all my uncles, her father, her uncles, all served in World War II, which would have been difficult to face them. So I kind of did the right thing. Well, in high school and stuff, in part of college, 6 of the 7 guys that I hung out with on a pretty regular basis, and most of them were in our wedding party, had served. One guy did fail the physical. He was a little short Jewish guy, just didn't pass. But 3 of the 6 enlisted, 1 in the Air Force, 1 in the Navy, and 1 in the Army. And the guy in the Army was an MP and went to Germany, so he was kind of out of it. The other 3 of us were all infantry. All 3 of us did come home.
One of them had such severe repercussions afterwards that he ended up committing suicide.
Yep. My brother Dennis enlisted about, right before I got out of high school, and he was in the Navy 1 week after high school, right after graduation, right in. He wanted to make the Navy his career. He did it for like 12 or 13 years, and then towards the end ran through all the crazy stuff, and he decided not to. He did volunteer to go to Vietnam. Because
So that you didn't.
at the time, they only had 1 sibling would go. So he was in the Navy coding and decoding, that's what he did. So he volunteered so I wouldn't have to go once he knew I was infantry. But, the Navy turned him down, and then I went to film. And I told him later, I wouldn't have done it for you.
His security clearance was too high. They didn't want him
Yeah.
in Vietnam.
They were for a couple of days. I requested a deferment before I could, because my brother was in the Navy. I tried to, sympathize with both sons, and my parents were in the service. But they turned it down. And the day after my brother's wedding was our first wedding anniversary. And I kind of figured out, we talked about it, I said, I know where I'm going. There's no worse place I could possibly be. And, you only get a chance to do this once. And like I said, the day after was the first wedding anniversary. I thought it was important. We spent at least the first wedding anniversary, because we didn't know to be more, together. So yeah, I did it. And then when I went on my way over to Vietnam, I got stopped. One of my stops was in Fort Lewis, Washington, and a colonel, sits me down and goes through the whole thing and explains everything. Your unit was waiting for you and everything. And he said, I'm going to give you a fine of $150, which is a lot of money at the time, plus a probation period. So if you do anything stupid, I'm going to break your rank. And he looks at me in the eye and goes, now, is that worth it, Sergeant? And I said, yes, sir, it was. And I would do it again. Mom was, really supportive. She wrote to me pretty much every single day. She would send me care packages like once a week or something like that. She got to live with me in parts of my training through Louisiana and Georgia. My mother would write me maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Aunt Grace would write me, twice a month or something like that. Grandmother Cena would write to me on a pretty regular basis, often. My father wrote me maybe 2 or 3 letters the whole time I was in Vietnam, which was a little disappointing, and what hurt me a little bit when I came home, never ever ever asked me what it was like or asked me, anything about it. So it kind of stung that, he was a World War II vet, but we never shared that time. So that hurt. There were several times where I really had some doubts. One of the first times was on patrol, just squad size, about 8 or 9 guys. And we're going down the trail. We could hear a helicopter overhead. And, through the canopy of the trees, you could kind of see him, but you really didn't know. And then we heard him go off in the distance. And then he came down towards us and made a gun run on us. He actually fired his weapons on our own friendly fire. We got on the radio immediately, called him off and everything. And he said after the fact that he saw the enemy on that trail, which could have been, but we said, well, if that was the case, why didn't you run parallel to us, or perpendicular versus parallel on our run? Because if he made another run or two, somebody would have definitely got hurt. There's no place to go. So I got first-hand feeling of what it was like to get fired upon from the air, which was not fun. Next thing was, the mortars. Even to this day, that's why I'm not good on fireworks and stuff. The certain mortar sounds or sounds of fireworks, the thump, 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 and the whistling sound just gives me chills up and down my neck. It's always, really no place to go. But they always joke that don't worry about it. It's the one you don't hear that's the problem. Well, it's still kind of scary, but even to this day, as you guys know, I'm not good on fireworks. The sound affects me big time, and that sound by itself does. Nothing as far as the shrapnel cutting through the trees. And then when the artillery comes in, you actually hear the metal cutting through the branches of the trees above you. You try to get as low as you can. You can't get any deeper. But it's kind of scary because there's no place to hide. There's no place you can go. And just hope it's not a direct hit on you. Another time I was scared when on patrols you put out your claymore mines at night. And usually, half the time, we were just a squad size, 8 of you guys in the jungle by yourselves. And you put out your mines at night, and then you put guard duty out. So the guy who on guard duty had all the mines and the clickers, which set the mines off, in front of him, unless you were in a very area where there could have been heavy contact, 2 guys would be awake. Well, in this case, it was just me. And the way it worked is where everybody slept, we ran communication wires around through the trees, and we tied either a sock or something. So if I was the 3rd knot or 3rd sock, when my turn was up, I'd go hold onto the wire and go down 1, 2, 3, 4, tap you wake up, you go on guard duty. Well, I guess one night I wasn't wide awake or anything, and my time was up, so I grabbed what I thought was the wire, and I get the wire, and this is getting lower, and I said, where the hell is it going? All of a sudden, I'm out at the Claymore mine. So the problem I had is, anybody who's awake hears anything, first thing you do is you blow the mines. I mean, that's the first thing you do. So now, I had to go back. It probably took me 20 minutes to go back to where it was because you didn't want to make any noise. Right? But that scared the crap out of me. It was really kind of bad. And again, we had problems around that time. We had friends of ours in our platoon that in the morning when you went to pick up your mine, they made a mistake. They didn't. You always marked the trail so you knew don't pass this spot. Your mines are in front of you. Somehow they misread it or weren't paying attention or whatever. They walked into their own mines. The first guy lost both legs. The second guy lost one leg. The third guy got pellets. So it's just tough. The last thing I could talk about is kind of scared me was our company was attacking a bunker complex. It was a whole battalion. The other 3 companies were set up on the other side of the bunker. Our job was to flush the enemy out the other side. So we're all getting ready for an attack on this bunker complex, which scared the crap out of us. And then the captain comes over to me and he said, I want you and the radio operator to stay behind and just kind of make sure we don't, have a problem or don't get, basically to guard the rear so we don't get the enemy to come around and a surprise attack or, assault the complex. So that was fine. I was thankful that I didn't have to go. And then all the guys, well, good luck and everything. They go. And about 5 minutes later, it's just the two of us. And the reality hit that, God forbid if there was a problem, everybody is up there. It's just the two of us. A radio. We have our own weapons. We don't even have a machine gun or anything. Everything's for the attack on the bunker complex. So that one scared the hell out of me. And we laid opposite directions and just kind of whispered to each other and just hoped nothing happened. And luckily, not good, it didn't. So that scared the hell out of me. And again, during the firefights, your training just kicks in. So that wasn't an issue. It was automatic. So that's kind of, I think I can
On
answer.
a lighter note, and tell you your funny story. The first time you're there.
The first time I got to Vietnam, you wait to go out into the field and everything. And my very first night, I'm with the first cav out in the bunker line, and they put me in a bunker, and there was a couple guys there. So they're telling me, okay, well, and what these guys did, which I didn't know after the fact, they stuck bayonets in the sandbags so there were holes, and they would tell me there were snipers at night that were shooting all night long. So he said, you got to be quiet, you got to kind of, don't stand up, don't do anything, just watch it. He said, we're so exhausted all last night, we were just up all night, it's been crazy. So I'm like, yeah, okay. He said, how long can you do it? I said, I'm good, I can stay awake all night long. So they're laughing their ass off, they're sleeping. So while I'm there, after a couple hours, it's boring, you're looking around and you think you see things. So I'm looking out across over the wire and everything, and I think I see a cigarette. Somebody, the cigarette lights up, lights up, goes down, I'm looking at it, and I'm staring at it, and I'm going, that can't be. That can't be. I can't wake these guys up. I'm a brand new guy. I'm an idiot. So I look at it, and I'm looking, I said, okay, this can't be. And now it looks like it's getting closer and closer to me. I said, this guy's going to be in the wire very shortly. Do I blow the mines? Do I blow the food gas or something? No, I can't do that. I'm a new guy. So I look at it, I said, okay, well, I put my rifle down on top of the sandbag, and I look, and I fire 3 shots. Boom, boom, boom. Right, I would have hit him right here. It wasn't anybody, it was a firefly, and I caught a lot of shit for that. So.
But he lived to tell it.
Yeah. Okay, when I got inducted, I went actually to Fort Hamilton, Brooklyn, where I got my paperwork done. From there, they sent me to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for processing, which is in Columbia, South Carolina. From there, they bused us, this was all the same day, to Fort Gordon, Georgia, which is Augusta, Georgia. And that's where I did my basic training in Augusta, Georgia, which is where you do the Masters Golf Tournament. Beautiful city. From there, I went to advanced infantry training in Fort Polk, Louisiana. Then I went to jungle school for, I think it was about 10 days in Fort Polk, Louisiana. That's when the reality hit. I wasn't going to Germany. After that, I went to NCO school in Fort Benning, Georgia, which is in Columbus, Georgia. Mom got to spend some time with me toward the end of my training. Then I went back to Fort Polk, Louisiana for on-the-job training, which was all the stuff they had. This is where you learned how to actually do it with the troops. So I was in charge of certain troops and stuff, which was kind of interesting. Basically, I tried to go to every school I possibly could for as long as I could without extending my term, and stay in the States as long as I can. That was my goal. Final draft notice was for May 30th, as Mom said before. But I had a friend who was his father was a congressman. I met with him and brought my wedding paperwork. Said I had here's the hall and everything else. And he said to me, "Okay, I can get you out."
The wedding was set for June 7th, so it was about a week later.
And so yeah, the wedding was June 7th. And the congressman said, I can get you out of it, but the next time they call you, you're going to go, right?" I said, "I promise, no problem." We shook hands on it, and I went to basic training on June the 11th. So it was that quick. So
We had to cut our honeymoon short. We were supposed to go to St. Thomas and ended up going upstate New York just to get away. And then we came home, and I'll never forget the last night home, because we knew the next day he was leaving and I wouldn't see him till who knows when at that point. It was a hard night.
And then about a year later I went to Vietnam, so less than a year later. Okay. Well, basically, like I said before, to postpone my inevitable going to Vietnam, I tried to stay here as long as I could and learn as much as I could, which is important. Plus, a sergeant in combat zone made about $500 a month, and a PFC made, I don't know, 150, 250, somewhere in that range, for the same thing. And I figured if I'm going to get shot at, I might as well get shot at for twice the money. So that's kind of went to NCO school. It's the bonding, it's the teamwork, it's leadership, the responsibility, the respect, basically learning how to stay alive. Believe it or not, it's a real good shot. As much as I am not a gun person, but I really became a good shot. And being a grunt or an infantryman, that was important. I was also pretty good at demolition. I learned, for some reason, I picked up those skills. I learned first aid really well. I was pretty good, and to this day I still am, good at map reading and orientation. I could look at the sun, I could look at the stars, and kind of tell time where I am. I learned a lot about discipline, which is, I guess, the bottom line, which I think helped me later on in life in business and stuff. And sometimes you guys as kids got a taste of it. So that's kind of what I got out of the training, and it turned out pretty well, I think. When I landed in Cam Ranh Bay, for the processing when I was in Vietnam, about 2 days later we were broken into groups, and by groups you were transported to your division headquarters. And again, I was in the first cab that was who selected me.
The Airmobile concept of using organic Army aircraft to perform the combat functions of wheeled and tracked vehicles was carefully developed and tested in 2.5 years of intensive effort at the Army's Great Infantry Training Center, Fort Benning, Georgia. The division was given a vast tactical area of responsibility, ranging from the South China Sea to the Cambodian border, and approximately 150 miles from north to south. Logistics operations were speeded up enormously. Vital cargo was delivered in record time, right into the hands of troops in the battle zone. Helicopters as flying ambulances saved many lives, carrying the wounded from firing line to field hospital, sometimes in a matter of minutes. All these advantages of air-mobile warfare were confirmed in the first days of combat.
Again, depending on need, being NCO sergeants, they cabs and infantry units, so they needed infantry sergeants. So I went to cav school for a couple days, and then looking back, I was kind of happy, if I was going to be in the infantry, the cav was a great place to be, because they had their own gunships, they had their own medevac choppers, they had their own UEs. It was just a code word you called in, and your own division was helping you. You didn't have to go through all the channels and all the other stuff, which was different. And the bottom line was, if you had a problem of any kind, the helicopters and the birds, we call the birds, were basically on site in 10 to 15 minutes. So you had to live or survive 10 to 15 minutes, unless you're at night. Then you had to survive the night. But being airmobile was they picked you up and they put you where the action was, which is important. The Cav was a pretty badass unit, and about 10% of all the people killed in Vietnam were first Cav. Well, the tour of Vietnam was 12 months. I wound up going just about 11 months because it was starting to pull back the troops and stuff. It was part of Vietnamization, so that's kind of how it worked.
During his campaign, Nixon announced he had a secret plan to end the Vietnam War. Known as Vietnamization, the plan called for the South Vietnamese Army to take over full responsibility for fighting the ground war and a gradual withdrawal of all American troops from Vietnam.
But basically, anybody who had time left on their service, my time was basically up. For every month you stayed extra in Vietnam, you got 2 months off your stay. So guys would stay an extra couple months. So when they left Vietnam, they were done with their service, being drafted. I only had 2 years, so almost a year of training, then a year there, and I was done. So, well, like I said before, I got mail every 2 to 3 days. Whenever we got resupplied, when we got our ammo and food and everything. And we used to get a newspaper which would give you a little bit about the news, but it was always like a week or so old. I got care packages, pretty much every other supply. I did get to call home twice in the year I was away, and this is what they called a Morse system, which was at a base camp. Now, in the field, you're out in the field, and from there you go to an LZ. From an LZ to a base camp was much bigger, and they had these shortwave radio. But you would get online and wait, and you had 5 minutes. 5 minutes meant you could, that's the dialing, get up, and then you had 5 minutes, and they gave you 30 seconds before it was done, and then they basically hung up on you. So everybody's around, so there's really nothing you can really say. Everything's just, pretty much generic, I love you, whatever. But only twice in the the year I was there, that I got to call home, and I would tell her ahead of time so she knew, because of the time difference, that I was going to try to call that day. And if there was bad connections, I didn't make it, but twice.
The real benefit was the fact that when you got a letter, he could have written it 3-4 days ago, and you didn't know that time when you were reading it if he was still alive. When you got off the ham radio, you knew you spoke to him in real time, and that alone was significant. So.
Much easier now, because now with everything, you contact almost every day. You're aware of what's going on. I think it's good for morale, because the thing you miss is, I missed a good part of her pregnancy with Tim. I just didn't know. I hope everything was okay. And if I ever got a letter, it was always like a week or so later or more. That could have been a problem.
That real-time element is important.
It's hard. But now, it's just great for morale. It's good to see friendly faces unless you have bad days. That's all you need just to pick you up. So I think it's much easier now than it was, back then.
Do you think too much information now is a bad thing for the soldiers? Too much real-time information?
It could be, yeah, it could be.
Gives them
You lose focus. Sometimes you need to be totally focused what you're doing. Now if your wife had a bad day or something's wrong, now you're worried about that the next day when you're out doing your mission, and that could be a problem. Could be a problem. So, well, my buddy Doug Fowler, who lives in Oklahoma, tagged me with the name of Pops, and that started basically because I was like 23 when I got to Vietnam, and turned 24 when I was there. But pretty much everybody else was 18, 19, 20, maybe 21. So they always teased me about being the old man and stuff, so they called me Pops. So it kind of stuck. But Doug did put me under his wing when I got there. He showed me a lot of tricks of the trade. He was Port Cherokee Indian. He showed me how to read a trail, which I'm like, what? Do you see that? I said, I don't see anything. He showed me. It was amazing. It did help. He was a PFC and I was a sergeant, but rank really didn't matter. It was just knowledge. But to this day, friends.
He wasn't there the whole time you were there?
No, he was the first couple months, which is when I needed him most. So it worked out well. When you had like the new guy, like everything, he showed me, like, every night we'd bunk together, and he'd show me, explain things. And it kind of fit, the pieces kind of came together. Mm-hmm. But, it was important that, we were like, oh boy, it was difficult.
He ended up making a lifetime career out of the military.
Yeah, unfortunately, one of the guys that was in the unit was less than a week, and he didn't make it. One less than a week. His name was Will. That's all I know. His name was Will, and he's from Puerto Rico. That's kind of all I knew. So nobody really put him under his wing. So, okay. But with all the training I had through, the period of time, and stuff, jungle school and everything, I kind of knew what to expect. When I got there, I didn't expect the heat, the humidity. It was something you just can't really train for, and all the patrolling and humping. It was kind of tough. I thought I was in pretty good shape, but it really, kicked your butt for a while. And again, I remember always being thirsty, constantly, want to drink. But, you carry a 60, 75 pound pack every day, and the temperature's 110, 120 degrees sometimes, with the humidity being whatever. It was crazy. It took a while to get used to that. But I did learn, as far as the water goes, how to save the water, not carry, because water is very heavy, and it really created a problem. One thing I never expected was all the leeches. Every time we were in a rice paddy or a stream, the little suckers would be all over you. They were constantly in all the joints, your armpits, your groin, everything. Again, we learned to put our boots and stuff, or our pants, which basically was almost like a rubber band type of thing that when it came up, they didn't get all the way up. But usually our shirts are up, so we would get into your shirt. We checked each other every time we came out of a stream and stuff for the little suckers. It was difficult. Basically, you salt on them or burn them with a cigarette and kind of let go.
The bites hurt?
No, you didn't even know they were there. You never even knew they were there. I also learned never, ever trust any Vietnamese person. It could be friends during the day, but at night they would either be VC or they would tell the VC that what was going on. And it was difficult. Whenever we were patrolling near a village or something, little kids would run out and they would want to carry your pack for you. And it was fine because it was great to get rid of the pack, but I took all the ammunition, the grenades and stuff off it and I let the kid carry the pack, but he always walked in front of me. I wanted to see him, I just wanted to make sure. And then we'd pay him with, little packs of cigarettes, like there were 4 cigarettes or something like that, in a pack. That was his reward. But I never really trusted him. And then at night, whenever we told them that DD Mao would get lost, we would wait about a half hour and we'd always move. We never stayed in the same spot because we just didn't know. So that was kind of difficult. I do remember, I wrote myself a note. The red in the dry season, the red dirt. You always had red dirt all over you, and whenever you went to a base camp or something, you could always tell who the infantryman was, the guy in the red dirt. Once I remember I came into a base camp, and it was a Sunday morning. I was passing a church. I walked into the church, and the mass had just started. I took my pack off, put my weapon down. And everybody there was dressed in nice, clean uniforms. I was filthy. I had to be there. So, it was just, things that you just did. So it just chokes me up a little bit. Just remember simple things like that. So. It was somewhere between, I thought about this, about 5 or 6 weeks. Which gave me a time to get a lay of the land, understand what was going on. Again, Doug helped me quite a bit, understanding, things, and being aware of it. So it was, again, about 5 or 6 weeks, but again, it wasn't a big firefight, it was just a quick thing. But I did learn before I had to get, into something more complicated. I'll be honest, I was scared shitless. Was scared to death. I didn't really know what to do, but your training does kick in. Your heart's pounding out of your chest. Luckily, it only lasted maybe 5, if that, 10 minutes at most. We came across some VC. They came across us. We were fired upon each other. They were probably as scared as we were. Looking back after the encounter, most of their shots were overhead. We could see all the holes in the trees, 8 feet up. They were just firing their weapons just to scare us. We, just as scared as them. But the VC would usually only fight for a short time, but they knew the helicopters and stuff were coming, and they'd only stay if they knew they had the advantage. The NVA was different. They didn't run. They kind of stayed, and they would fight for a while. And then I remember my first firefight. One of the old timers who really didn't even talk to me very much in the beginning. His name was Frenchie. He said, "Welcome to the first cap." So I was accepted. It was kind of cool. I probably said 50 words to him after that, but I was the new guy, so that's the way it works. Again, you always carry 300 to 400 rounds of your own ammo. Depending where you went, you carried 200 to 300 rounds of the squad's machine gun, because you came to fight, you want to have the extra weapon. We carried Claymore mine or 2, depending on where we were going. We carried our flares, bayonet, your machete, your mesh hammock, your blanket, your towel, your poncho, 2 or 3 smoke grenades, for marking yourself. You carried probably 6 hand grenades. You carried your first aid kit, your machetes, like I said, your food, your water, and stuff. And you carried about 60, 70 pounds worth of stuff. And then depending on the mission, sometimes you carry a night scope. If you're doing an ambush at night, we can actually see in the dark, so it kind of got you to see the enemy if they were coming. We also had sound detectors we would plant in a trail, and you could hear, so I had a headphone on, and you could hear the movement. Well, that was cool, but with the animals moving around the jungle, you're always like, somebody's out there, and you really, unless you had the scope, you didn't know whether it was an animal or a bad guy. So that was kind of bad. We always carried, on many of our missions, what they called the M72, which are the laws, which are basically a small bazooka, and you use them in bunker complexes. That's what you blew into the bunkers and blew them away. Everything like that added extra weight to your pack. Again, we had to carry extra tripwire and mines and stuff, just,
Did each individual carry all these things, or did you just share it?
No, pretty much everybody carried one. There's 8 of you carry 8 laws, because you only get 1 shot. It's a 1-shot weapon, one and throw it away. So if you have a bunker complex, there's usually more than 1 bunker. So, and usually you're not the greatest shot. When you're scared, you're nervous, and you miss. So you want to carry it. So everybody kind of carried it. To tell you the truth, I liked most of them. I couldn't stand the scrambled eggs and ham. That was terrible. I always traded that for something. But it wasn't bad at all. I mean, I would trade it, for, and I would trade my cigarettes in a pack for candy or fruit or something like that. Was good. The best meals we had in the field were what they called LURPs, which were dehydrated food. which is now popular in all the camping stores. That was, 48 years ago. You would just put hot water in it, mix it up, and then everybody in the squad did, they all carried some kind of condiment. Like you carried a A1 sauce, you carried the hot sauce, you carried this, and then at night you just mix whatever you wanted in your meal, and it was pretty good. I mean,
To this day, he still puts sauce on a lot
I
of
put
things.
everything, yeah, but it was pretty good. I mean, I don't have a problem, if it wasn't a gourmet meal, but it was good enough to fill your stomach, so it wasn't bad at all. Here's an example of a day. I mean, first thing at night after we stopped humping was about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night. We would always first, always put our mines out and put our tripwires out and the flares just to protect ourselves. Because again, usually it was 8 of us, and 8 against the world is not good. So you wanted to do that first to protect yourself. Then what we do, we'd eat, and 1 or 2 guys would always be on guard while the other guys ate, and then you'd rotate that. That took 15, 20 minutes. Then basically read or reread a letter, write a letter, something like that real quick. Then I'd set the guard duty schedule for the night. There were usually 8 of us. Basically, from 8 o'clock at night to like 6 in the morning would be the guard duty. The first guy and the last guy got a double shift. So they got, say, 2 hours here, 2 hours in, whatever else, 45 minutes around the way. And it rotated, so that's how that was set up. That was important to set up. Then what I would do is I'd call in a fire mission, I'd call into the artillery, I'd look at the map, where we were, look at the intelligence we had, where the enemy we thought could possibly be, and I'd call in artillery shells to mark a position with smoke. And I'd say, okay, we'll move it in 50 yards. And we'd say, okay, mark. And we had a code word for that. Then I'd take the second one and mark, because at night, if you come under attack, it's too late to do that. You can't see it. So if anything happens in the middle of the night and somebody's attacking you, I'd say, fire for effect. I give the code word. They would drop artillery on that spot. And I could walk it in or walk it out, whatever we want to do, because you just had to do that. That was important. So we took care of the fire mission. Then, there was still maybe a half hour left of daylight or so. We'd play a couple hands of what we call spades, which is similar to hearts. And we bet, silly things like, cigarettes or candy or something like that for a couple of hands of spades. So that was about it. And I kind of went to bed around 8:30 at night, and then you slept till like 6 in the morning, unless it was your turn for guard duty. So that was pretty much what happened during in some ways, boredom. Okay, the first Cav worked on what they called a rotation of 24/6. It was 24 days in the field, 6 days at a base camp or an LZ. There were 4 companies in a brigade. Huh?
Unit.
In the unit. Again, and then 6 days, 6 days, 6 days, it makes 24 days. So every fourth you'd be rotating. So one company would be at the base camp, the other 3 companies would be out in the field from the battalion. So I said battalion, what I said before, so it's battalion. So you kind of rotated. On patrol, basically about half the time was just, 8 or 10 guys out there, and the other half of the time was platoon/company, so half and half. So half the time you're just 8 of you, the other half of the time it's 40 guys or 100 and something, with the company. They depended on whatever your mission was. I mean, if you were out to recon, they drop you in there. They thought there was enemy. Your job basically was to go find them, search and destroy, find them. So you went out on your mission and did it. Ambushes, you're pretty sure there were certain trails. You set up ambushes during the day or at night, which is kind of boring in a lot of ways because you're there, and most of the time they never showed up. So it was kind of crummy. Twice we had to protect. A helicopter was shot down, and they called for help. We were the closest unit, so we go to protect the pilots, and then they pull the helicopter out and everything else. So that was part of the missions too. And then we'd always get resupplied every 3 or 4 days, where they come in and drop off the food and everything like that. And once we put our perimeter out, the helicopters came in and gave us our stuff. What we always did though is we'd break out the food, and everybody got their 3 days worth of food. They got their mail, they got everything else. And we put all the junk in a big pile, and we put it on fire. But most of the time, whenever we did that, we always booby-trapped it, because the enemy kind of knew where you were, and you'd be off on a trail somewhere over here, something go boom. So okay, somebody found it, because they'd always scrounge for something that was in there. And some guys would always be lazy. They'd throw something in the pile that probably shouldn't be, but it was kind of important. At the base camp of the LZ, basically, you basically patrolled the perimeter, You know, every morning you went out, checked the wire, you checked your mines, you checked your flue gas, which was like a gasoline propellant that you'd fire, and it shot like a napalm, which, you know, again, you don't create as much damage as you could. That was what you did on patrol, and then the rest of the time on a base camp or something was free time. You could sleep, you could write letters, you could play cards. Some of the big base camps had a movie at night, and then towards the end of my tour, I became a sergeant of guard for a whole battalion. They had a basketball court, but the problem was the dummies would have it lit at night, and the enemy could figure out and calculate how much rounds it was to drop on the basketball court. So I had a long discussion with, I said, I'm the sergeant of guard. You can't light up your basketball courts because you're just inviting artillery rounds. So we had a discussion about that. But you get, again, on base camp, you got to eat hot food. You got to take what we call a hot shower. You could take a poop on a real toilet, not in the woods. So
Digging a hole?
not dig a hole. I was always in what they called 3 Corps. I mean, there was we had 4 corps of Vietnam. The north, number 1 was up north on the DMZ. Number 4 was in the Mekong Delta. The 3 Corps was around Saigon. We were always around Saigon, north of Saigon, all the way to the coast, all the way to the mountains. It was Phuc Vinh, Quang Moi, Ben Hoa, Tay Ninh, Long Ben. All those areas were in that general area around the Saigon area. But basically our job was kind of protect Saigon. I was only in Cambodia for 9 or 10 days. So, you know, people ask me questions, I'm kind of embarrassed a little bit, but I really wasn't one of the guys. I was really new, just got to the country. I hadn't paid my dues. The first cav went into Cambodia on May 1st, 1970. I didn't arrive till June 19th. So you can see we were out 10 days later, the 29th, I think it was. Everybody knew they were going somewhere. They weren't told until they were in the air they were going to Cambodia. And Doug was telling me that he questioned the lieutenant and said, "What's an invasion of a neutral country? Usually, I just get on the ground and do this." So it's like they knew it, but that was kind of how it worked. And I think the bottom line is we caught them totally by surprise. Our frontline troops wound up fighting their rear echelon or their support troops. So we kind of kicked their ass pretty much. Our company, even though we had nobody was killed in Cambodia, they had 7 guys that were wounded in the 2 months that we were there. We discovered large caches of ammunitions, weapons, grenades, tanks, mines, everything you could think of, and I really believe that because of that, it made my life, you know, so much easier for the time I was there, because all those weapons and stuff were not available to be fired upon us. Each company, each member of our company, everybody in Delta Company, first, second, and fifth, got an AK-47 rifle as a souvenir of war, minus the firing pin. That was kind of neat. Being an FNU guy, it took me a couple weeks, like I said before, to get kind of welcome. And most of the old timers said the new guys, they didn't want nothing to do with you because they said new guys make mistakes get people killed. So I was kind of, you know, other than Doug and 2 other guys, I was kind of like, okay. And I was not awarded an AK-47 because I didn't pay my dues. So, you know, I understand it, you know.
From a historical perspective, what was the significance of going into Cambodia?
Well, it was to stop the supply lines from coming down through Cambodia into, you know, South Vietnam. That they had trails. It was amazing what they did. I mean, how much they could move down, but it basically stopped or slowed down what they were able to bring in. So, I mean, it was an invasion of a neutral country, but war is war. So, morale was relatively pretty good in the field. It was just the guys in the field. It turned out pretty well. I did have a problem with one of the new West Point lieutenants who came in. That kind of did everything by the book. You know, Elton Kerwin, I'll never forget it. He wanted certain things. He sent our squad over on a patrol across the field, and then on the razor, "Well, come on back." I said, "No, you don't come back across the same field. You never do that." He said, "Well, I need you back." I said, "I'll come back here, but I'm not coming across the open field." And make a long story, she had issues with some of the other squad leaders, and the 4 squad leaders got together and had a conversation with them. LT, you know, would have tried to be obstinate, but there's things you just don't do here. So he was relatively good about it. Took a little while for him to get used to it, but then he kind of understood, you know, guys in there longer understood more. So it worked out well. The only morale issues were basically at the LZs and more so at the base camps, which are bigger. Once we came in from the field, we had a lot of issues with the black troops. Even in our company, were friends. Once they got to the base camp, all the black guys get the handshakes and the bumps and stuff like that, which was a little bit different. But that was, right after the civil rights problems and stuff like that, and the Olympics with the Olympians, we gave them the Black Panther move and everything. Another problem we had was smoking grass. We had a lot of guys high as a kite for 5 or 6 days in the base camps or the LZs. And I told my squad, you guys can do whatever you want to do here at the base camp. Once we get on the chopper to go back in the field, it ain't happening. I said, you're not going to smoke. I said, first off, we're only 8 or 10 guys traveling together. We depend on each other to survive. The problem is, if you smell grass, you can smell it from a long way away. And you just want to be quiet and not found. So that was it. Then I had one other issue with a lifer sergeant. He was going to be a career soldier versus, a shake and bake. He started giving me crap about being a shake and bake. And I said, well, what are you blaming me for? I said, I did what I could. He was one rank higher than me, and he was in the service for 12 years. So I said, this is the way it is, He said, but I did my job. I said, you did. But, my feeling is you should be in the field. This is your career soldier, and I should do your job, which was a supply sergeant. So if I make a mistake, somebody gets the wrong pillows or somebody gets the wrong sheets, I make a mistake out there and I'm a new guy, I get people killed. So we had a difference of opinion. I've done that before. I said, but this is your career. You've chosen. I didn't. So we didn't agree on that. And then after a while, people kind of separated us. We just didn't kind of see each other. We'll probably never see it the same way. So I never saw him again, but I remember having a heated discussion. So, and I wasn't drinking that much. We saw one tiger in the whole year I was there, and I got pictures in my book, which we came across, and it was a platoon-sized patrol. We were in high elephant grass, which is like 8 foot tall, and somebody yelled tiger, and we all had to move back, and then they yelled, okay, do not fire, of course, shoot it down, and the guys on the other far column shot the tiger, and then the colonel came out and picked up the tiger, and it's probably mounted on his wall somewhere in Indiana or wherever.
Right in front of his fireplace.
Yeah, somewhere wherever he lives and stuff, which is kind of crazy.
He pulled rank and walked off with it.
Yeah. And like I said before, I hated the leeches. The leeches were everywhere. I mean, it was just unbelievable. It just attached different parts. I really wasn't afraid of snakes. I never really was, and even to this day, not a big deal to me. I mean, if they hung from a tree, I had a machete behind my back, just one shot and done with the snake. But again, I never really thought about it.
There were a lot of poisonous snakes there.
Well, yeah, that's the next thing. One of our guys from Minnesota, a guy named Mark, we were on patrol, and he stepped over a log, and a bamboo viper, which is very deadly, hit him. But he hit him halfway on the boot and halfway, on his leg. Luckily for us, we had the medic traveling with us, so we had to get him out. And he was pretty cool for the most part. This was when my demolition came in, so we put the demolition wire, we blew the trees right out. Instead of chopping them with the machete, we'd be there for 2 weeks. So just blew the trees right out so we could lift him out. And he was comfortable with it until we had to put the snake's head, we had to kill the snake, so they knew which anti-venom to give him. We put the snake's head in his pocket. And he was swearing that the snake was still alive. So he's screaming and yelling and everything that the snake is in it. We got to get him out of there. And time was of the essence because he could die. And he did go out, and he never came back to the field. So he survived, but I have no idea where he went or what happened to him after the fact. The other thing, I didn't like the monkeys. The monkeys were everywhere. They were chirping and everything, and we did things the monkeys we probably shouldn't talk about. But they make so much noise, and you try to be quiet, and they're chirping. The only thing good is if you're sitting down and the monkeys are chirping, something's coming your way, whether it's an animal or the bad guys or whatever. It is a problem. And one of the other things that I probably never mentioned before is when we got to the big base camps, we pulled guard duty on the bunkers. So that was your job. You sit out there, but you're actually in a bunker. The problem is the rats. We had rats everywhere in the bunkers. They would try to steal your food. The rats were sometimes as big as my forearm, and you lay in the bed trying to sleep, and you could feel them climbing all over you. It was just different. So I was kind of happy to go back to the field. So yeah, my birthday, my squad gave me a birthday cake. They got a sea ration pound cake. They melted a chocolate bar on top of it and put a little candle in it. That was my birthday. No singing, of course, because we're in the woods.
That was December 15th.
Yeah, December 15th. Thanksgiving, we were we were traveling company size. The battalion sent out a Thanksgiving dinner to us by helicopter, and they brought the food out and stuff. And again, we had to set up a perimeter to make sure we were protected. But they brought everything you could think of for a Thanksgiving dinner, the whole 9 yards. Turned out great. It was wonderful. About 2 hours later, we went back in the field. So it was kind of neat. It was something different. And Christmas, I was at the Bob Hope show. I had a friend of mine who was the mail clerk, and he got a message out to the field. We were getting resupplied today, and he said, I got 2 tickets to the Bob Hope show. If you can get in, you can do it. So I was able to get in. My glasses broke.
Yes, sir. This is the biggest military installation in Vietnam with 25,000 men. And with all the troop withdrawals, I'm surprised to see anybody here. It was nice of you guys to stick around just for me. This is Christmas Day, not quite the same at home, but still Christmas, complete with a GI version of Santa on his sleigh. And you haven't lived till you've seen an MP in a red suit and 6 sergeants with antlers.
So I went to the Bob Hope show, and we were sitting way in the back because all the wounded guys from the hospital sat up front, which is fine, but it was kind of neat to see. I got back in the field, and 2 days later I came home because my R&R and Tim was born. So that was pretty much the holidays. So it went kind of neat. It was the best R&R. It was great. I remember coming home. It was great to hold her, great to hold my son for the first time. It was neat. But I do remember the cold, how cold it was, and it was a snowy January, December, January in New Jersey at the time. And I remember the snow, and I'm out shoveling it a little bit. I'm thinking, I'm 110 degrees, now it's freezing out here. It was kind of different. The mom said the extension, the Red Cross came back after I had left to go back, and it was too late to do anything, and I really knew that, now I definitely have to come home. It's just something that, I have a family, so you got to do that. So
we were able to have Tim's baptism while he was home, so that was very special.
Again, we were aware of it. Again, we got the paper and stuff, but it was outdated and stuff, and it was scrubbed because it was a Army newspaper. But you can see what was going on. You could be aware of it. We couldn't do too much about it. Most of us, we talked about it among ourselves, but I think the bottom line was, let's get the hell out of here, and we'll worry about it when we get home. Again, getting home was the big thing, and like I said before, one of the most popular songs of the time is "We Got to Get Out of This Place" by the Animals, and I still sing it to this day. So
one of the hard things was the disrespect that was shown to them whenever they were back in civilization, being spit upon and avoiding wearing their uniform unless they absolutely had to, because they knew that they were in for a lot of negative repercussions.
First of all, I took all my pills on a religious basis in Vietnam. So I took my malaria pills, took the big horse pill once a week. I get home from Vietnam, and a week or so later, I went back to work in Aero Electronics, and I basically thought where I worked, there was a big air conditioning unit above my head, and I figured, coming from the changes from the jungle into the air conditioning, it was just bad, and I just thought I had a real bad cold, but it got worse and worse and worse. And then Mom was the one who basically said, when I was talking to her, I wasn't making any sense. It was just totally out of it.
There's several obvious stages of malaria. One is a very, very high fever, 406 degrees, and then after that you would get delirious, because again your brain was literally frying, and then you would get chills, and then you'd be fine for a little while. This was a constant cycle. And he kept saying, I don't have malaria, it's the air conditioner, I don't have malaria. And I kept saying, you do, and finally, after like the 4th or 5th bout of this scary, fevers like that kill people.
Yeah. Well, you put me in a bathtub, they cool me down and everything like that.
But I got him to see a doctor, and that was burning out by then. but he did put him in the hospital. He did the blood test, and they confirmed that yes, it was malaria.
And
He ended
again-
up having it 3 times over the course of a year.
And they gave me the quinine, which kind of stopped it, but the way it is.
All the
can't take
doctors
much
wanted slides of his blood because it was so rare from them being
Supposedly
American
vaccinated.
doctors. Yeah, but just the fact that they didn't have it in their repertoire because they went to medical school and didn't go to Vietnam, they wanted it in case they had to deal with it from other soldiers.
I said this, and I believe with all my heart. If you go to war, you go to war to win. You don't go in and play a game. You should let the generals run it, not the politicians. It got to the point where it was just crazy. Body count was the big thing, and the rule was 10-to-1 ratio. So if you kill 10 of them, you could lose 1 guy. You know, kill 20, it could be 2 guys. But if you were the mother, the wife, the kids of 1 or 2 guys that were killed, it's just not right. So I mean, it was a crazy way to do it. I mean, the other thing was there were times where they had what they had called no fire zones. So I could see the enemy, and I was not allowed to fire at him unless he fired upon me, which is absolutely stupid. Absolutely stupid. And we had a deal in our squad. If we saw somebody, he was out. We took him out. And then what we did, we walked over, put a grenade on his belt, and we said, we saw his grenade, we feared for our lives. That's what we did. So, I mean, I'm sorry, it's not fair, but if you make a mistake and if you flinch, you could die. So it was a problem. And again, I believe with all my heart that we will never, this country will never, ever, ever win another war. We don't have the stomach for it. And she's tired of hearing me say this. I believe every empire, the Greeks, the Romans, the Aztecs, has its rise and fall. We are witnessing the fall of the American empire. I believe it with all my heart, and that's how I feel.
The other part of it was one of the first wars where the media was actively involved, again, in real time. And we all know how liberal the media is, and they were more worried about the civilians that were being killed versus their own soldiers. And it played into the politics of it, and again, exacerbated that we shouldn't be there mentality and made the whole thing tougher on everybody.
Would have gone. I think it was the right thing to do at the time, and I do it again. I think most of the vets who did it were there would say the same thing. If I had one thing to do over again, I think I would have stayed closer to my guys that I knew, my squad, my platoon, company. Again, I think I closed that chapter of my life too soon, but I was anxious to get home and start a family and everything, and they kind of taught you not to get too close to people because then it hurts so much. So, when Doug contacted Tom, when he started the website, I mean, it was 40 years since I'd seen him, and some of the guys I haven't talked to since. So, but it's, again, looking back, I wish I would have, but even if it was today and I saw them, what do you say after 45 years or 48 years? Not a lot. I mean, it's too late, it's done, it's over.
It was also what allowed you to cope.
Yeah, again, it gave me the time to separate it, and again, that'd be the one thing I wish I would have been a little closer. Somebody, units have their reunions and stuff. We haven't. Again, that's the way it is. But again, maybe for me, it's best just to leave it the way it is. There's one medal that's the most important to me. It's a CIB, which is the Combat Infantryman badge. It's the blue badge with the rifle on it. That's the most important. Be an infantryman. That's your little gold star. You're a grunt. That's important. There were 3 criteria. You had to be in the infantry with the 11 Bravo, grunt. You had to be assigned to an infantry unit. The 1st Cav was. And you actively engage in ground combat, which we did. Now, of that, some guys who were infantrymen never saw combat, so they didn't get it. But again, it's a small fraternity who got that. So to me, by far, it's the most important thing. Again, only 10% of the troops that went to Vietnam were infantry, and not every one of them, like I said, got the medal, but that's the most important. The Bronze Star and the Purple Hearts are nice, they're great. It proved that I was, as a grunt, I proved myself as a man. That's important to me. But that's the most important medal that I have. Yeah, we were inserted into a hot LZ the day before. Intelligence said it was large enemy contact in the area. We went company size, so it was about 110 guys that went in on helicopter assaults, which we usually did when it was large enemy in the area. We were on patrol, and our platoon, the 3rd platoon, we rotated. We were the last platoon in the company. The other platoons were in front of us. Okay? Then my squad was the last squad in the whole platoon. So basically, my squad was the caboose in the parade going down the river. We were walking on a trail. It was relatively quiet, but everybody's aware. Everybody's tenses are up. Then all of a sudden, everything hit the fan. Fire, boom, everything's going on. RPGs are being fired at us. Things went crazy. We walked into an ambush. Fortunately for us, the NVA opened up too soon. They had an L-shaped ambush, guys in front, guys on the side, and walking this way. They didn't wait long enough enough guys to get into the kill zone, what we call the kill zone. So they opened up a little too soon, probably 10, 15 seconds too soon. My job as the last squad in the back was to protect that we didn't get overrun from the back end. We had to make sure that we didn't get,
flanked.
Surrounded, I guess is the best way to put it. And what happened, all the rifle fire, the machine gun fire, the grenades, everything, it's hectic, it's loud, all kinds of stuff's going on, and then we pushed out to make sure we circled everything around. And then shortly after that, we saw about 8 or 10 NVA trying to circle behind us. And our job was to push out to get them, make sure they didn't get it, which we did. And with all the excitement and everything, somehow I got a couple pieces of shrapnel in my arm. And again, it kind of felt like someone putting a cigarette out. It was hot. But again, you don't think of it at first, and it hurt, but it wasn't a big deal. And that's kind of my $1 million wound. Unfortunately, we lost 2 guys that day, and we had 8 or 10 guys that were wounded that were in the front of the column. We did kill 6 NVAs that we found, plus several blood trails. But the whole thing lasted less than 10 minutes, and then the NVA pulled out once our gunships got on call, and we made contact with the enemy 6 times in the next 3 days. So it was a pretty hectic period. And then my second, Purple Heart was similar to that, but just another more shrapnel, another little encounter. But I guess the bottom line is I grew up a lot. I wasn't as carefree or happy-go-lucky as I was before. I guess few people really cared about our sacrifices, and it really hurt a little bit. I mean, luckily Mom was very, very supportive, so that was important to me. Life just went on. I mean, I had a family, things changed. I had to fight pretty much on a pretty regular basis to keep everything kind of in check. You try to grow your career at the time. Again, like I said, I couldn't have done it without Mom's support. She was there all the time. She knows probably more than anybody what's going on. The thing that hurt the most, when I get home, I took off my uniform and I never put my uniform on back again in public. I mean, I tried to closet a couple times to see how
See if it fits.
chunky I got, but I've never put it on again. And again, it kind of hurt that, there's no yellow ribbons, and I'm not upset with the vets today. But again, our whole generation was screwed.
The sense of pride was taken away.
It was taken away. It hurt. So, it's the way it is. And life's not always fair, but you move on. So, my wife and the family, the baby was there. You had to move forward. You had to put the past. I worked hard at putting things behind me. You had to build for the future. You kind of like suck it up. Went back to work, like I said, right away. I really didn't have a lot of time to, assimilate back into the world. Life goes on, and you do it. It's funny, several years later I heard, I guess one of my business trips and stuff, I heard 2 guys talking at the bar, and, we were chit-chatting about the war and everything, and I'm kind of sensitive because a lot of guys that always talk about the war were the cooks and the clerks and stuff, the infantry don't really talk. But the one guy said to the other, it stuck in my mind, I don't know if he told you this. When were you in Vietnam? And the other guy said, last night. I learned a lot of, things that helped me in the business world. I was very lucky. I learned about leadership, responsibility, respect, discipline. And again, it really helped me tremendously, I think, in the business world.
He was fortunate. He came home to a job.
Yeah,
it was
I had
a little bit better than they saw the potential in him because he had the discipline that came with it, and they gave him credit for that. So it was a step-up job, and it was the beginning of a lifelong career. So he had the support system that so many didn't have.
Yeah, I was fortunate in a lot of ways that I helped. Like I said before, not much has changed. I still believe the politicians lost the war. We didn't fight to win. Guys served because that's what they had to do. It was the right thing to do at the time. I still feel, like I said before, we'll never win another war because we don't have the stomach for it. Again, it would have been nice, as you said before, that the public at least acknowledge. I get a couple acknowledgments now, 40 whatever years later, but even now we go out sometimes the airport will buy a veteran, a lunch or something. It would have been nice so much as something, but it just wasn't there. And it just put it in the back and you just move on. That's all. This is tough. Every time I see it, I touch the names.
When he had his first bout of malaria, he got a letter from home, from Vietnam at home, and he was laying on the couch in one of his lucid periods, and the letter was from one of his men telling him how he had lost 6 of the men over there who had walked into a booby trap. And that was the hardest part for him because he lived that typical, if I had been there, I could have saved them. I could have made a difference. I didn't have to happen.
It's the guilt thing that you have. But again, I go and I always touch the names of all of them. I touch the names of guys from my high school, my hometown. It's a great tribute.
We went there the day before. We went there the day before it opened.
Yeah, we went to Washington, D.C. the day before it officially opened, because it was important to me. I took a day off from work. She went with me, which is great. Honestly, I cry every time I go. So it's just a tough deal. 10 guys from my company died in Vietnam, and 14 guys from my hometown. So it's freedom isn't free. That's what it's about. But it hits you when you know the people, so it's difficult. So
makes it real.
The wall has always been. Oh, you've seen me once or twice. It just is emotional for me. So, I'm okay.
If he needed to talk, I would listen. If he needed to just be quiet, I would hold his hand. When he was upset, he just knew I was there. And I played by his cues and gave him the support he needed, mainly emotionally. But again, even though the rest of the country wasn't, I was very proud of him. And he knew that. And he knew that what he had done was important to us, not just because we're American citizens and believe in the country and all the sis kumbah that goes with that, but the reality that he provided for us. He gave us the roots of our family. We were able to prosper, and all these years later we have grandchildren to tell these stories to, but it's all because he made that sacrifice, and we were fortunate. It didn't have to be the ultimate sacrifice, but again, because of his experiences, we were very aware of what that ultimate sacrifice was to other people that we cared about.
And I'm not going to say whether those young people were guilty or not guilty. I'm just going to say what you did, whether it was right or wrong, you're forgiven for it. Come on back home.
Totally freaking betrayed. It was that. So that happened. I said, Mom, my sons will never serve in the army or service unless this country is invaded. There's absolutely, total disdain. I believe this country is a country of laws. You break the laws, you pay the price. To do that, it basically slapped everybody who went in the face. That's how I feel. We did the right thing. I was so upset. I flew our flag at the house upside down at half-mast for like a week. I can just never, ever forgive Carter. And a draft dog, to me, it just hurts. Just writing this pisses me off. It just never will pass. That'll never pass. Jane Fonda will never pass. Those things are just not going to happen. I feel that too. First, a platoon basically showed what life was in the field. What it was like, how things happened so quickly, how some of the soldiers' issues, some of the race issues, some of the issues we talked about earlier, the pot and all that stuff. But again, that was kind of a snapshot of it. And then We Were Soldiers gave you a good example of what the first Cav was like, with the helicopters, the assaults, how they were there, even, remember we were surrounded, how they came in with supplies, how they made the gunship runs and everything like that. So those are the two things that really, were important. Again, the We Were Soldiers basically gave you a feeling of what the first Cav was, the Airmobile, attack, for the wars. People have to know that, people my age basically did what the government asked them to do. They supported, they fought, they died for this country. Again, freedom isn't free. War isn't like it is on TV. It's dirty, it's ugly, it's people are screaming, people are hurting. I don't know, the media just portrayed us as being heartless and stuff. That's not the case totally. I mean, we were sometimes, but again, you weren't there the day before, 2 days before, where that village, did things to you. So now you want to take retribution back. So it's difficult. Again, basically it was, I hate to say this, there was no prisoners. You don't take prisoners. It's me or you, and if it's me or you, that's it. It's cold, it's ugly, and I'm sorry. I mean, we all talked about what was my biggest fear. I mean, my biggest fear was getting a hand-to-hand combat fight with a bayonet. Well, if I'm fighting you, I have a bullet. I cheated. Sorry, and that's it. I'm not going to try this thing. But it was, I don't know.
One of the harsh realities was, at some point, when you realized that the enemy was somebody else's father, brother, son, and you had to bring yourself back because you couldn't fight a war knowing or feeling that way. But at some point, inevitably, there was an encounter that brought you to that reality.
I really never said this before, but one of the things that's back in my mind, and it scares the hell out of me, is I'm petrified of this Agent Orange. I mean, even today we were talking to people, 93% of the country had Agent Orange, seeped in the water and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I went through areas where it was totally just stripped of everything. You walk through that, I would take my baths in a bomb crater, with water, just to be clean. You take water out of the streams, because that's what you did. I mean, luckily, I don't have any issues today, but it's always in the back of my mind that there's a problem. My friend Chet, which you guys remember, I think you remember Chet, he was in the Air Force, and he loaded the Agent Orange on planes, and when he got sick at the end, I went to see him on a pretty regular basis, and he swore that he was dying because of the Agent Orange, and all you need is a fraction of a gram of it into your system, and it'll kill you. So it was kind of scary. But on a positive thing, the country was beautiful. Vietnam was a beautiful country. The triple canopy jungles were neat. The animals, the wildlife, the rivers, the streams. The mountains were everywhere, even the beaches. I got a chance to actually surf the South China Sea one time, which was kind of cool. The rubber tree plantations, which the French had for years, were gorgeous. But it was different. It was really nice. I guess those who've seen war never stop seeing war, is the way I keep saying. That's the way it is. So I'm glad this is done. I wanted to get this done, for the family history somewhere down the road. Sorry it took so long, but healing it takes a while. So thank you for doing it. I appreciate it. And thank you for being there for all these years.
It was your interest at the college level that first opened those doors, and it's been a slow progression, but that was the unlocking the door to letting him let it out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing with us.
In this dirty old part of the city where the sun refused to shine, people tell me there ain't no use in trying. Oh my girl,